Hi everyone, so today I'm going to create a ScanNCut cutting file for this little dog bone applique that I'm going to be stitching onto a dog bandana. So I have had quite a lot of new subscribers to the channel over the last year, so I just thought I'd do a little quick recap. I've opened my applique stitch file in Embrilliance Essentials, which is what you can see here on screen. So the first thing I need to do is find the placement step in order to be able to make a cut file. I've got my design here, as you can see, and over on the right hand side I've got the steps that make up this design. When you open a design like this, if you don't see it, just click on the little arrow, or you may have a plus sign if you use a Windows computer. I use a Mac and this is how I see mine. So I'm going to click on the first step here, which is highlighting just inside the inner outer edge of this bone, if that makes sense, and that's basically the placement stitch, and it shows the colour that that stitch has been assigned. In this case it's electric blue. Before I go any further, I'll just go to the stitch simulator and you can see it here. So the steps of this design are in blue, grey and green, and you can see them here, and that's basically what your normal applique is. It's 3 steps. It's a placement stitch to show you where to lay your fabric. You put your fabric down, then there's a tack down stitch, and then there's generally the last, outer stitching, which can be a satin stitch, it can be a bean stitch, an E-stitch, whatever. So these are the 3. So I'll just run the simulator just to show you. So the blue swatch here over on the right hand side is this first step. So if I slide the stitch simulator along, you can see there's the blue step. That's the step I want to use to make a cutting file. Then it goes to the grey step, which is the tack down stitch, and then it goes into the green, which is the finishing stitch. Okay, so they're the 3 steps. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to add some text in here. This design isn't symmetrical and it also looks slightly lopsided. So I'm going to select the item, and in the top right hand corner you'll see a little blue circle, and when you hover over it, that gives you rotating handles. I'm just going to try and level it up ever so slightly, but like I say, it's not completely symmetrical from what I can see, because this line here at the bottom isn't level. Now I've made the top line level, and this side here of the bone looks slightly different to the other sizes, but I'm just going to go with it. This is the design I've got and this is what I'm going to use. So I'm going to click on the letter A at the top of the screen, and that brings up the text box. So I'm going to select my text, and here's all the text information. So in where it says text and ABC, I'm going to change that to I'm cute and hit enter. And by default, it tends to come up with the block font, which is a font in Embrilliance Essentials that you get for free. I could use that font. I'm just going to scroll down and see if there's anything else that I might like to use. That's quite nice. I might use that one. So I'm going to shrink it down to make it fit in here. Might just make it a little bit smaller, and I think that will probably do. So I'm going to select everything. I'm going to make sure it's all centered in the hoop, and then I'm going to center it all on the page so I know that it's hopefully all lined up. So I'm just going to change the color of it because it's coming as blue, and it's a lighter blue than this dark blue up here, but just for the sake of the video. So I'm going to select it's come up as Wilcon Scion. I'm going to select that colour, go to the colour swatch, and let's just make it red or something like that to make it easier to see on the screen. Okay, I'm not going to stitch it in red, but just so you can see it. So now I've got my 4 steps of this design. I've got my placement, my tack down, my outline satin stitch, and my words. So this is the design now that I'm going to use. So I want to make the cut file for the dog bone, because the words I'm cute are just going to be stitched in thread, probably maybe white, I'm not sure yet. So I'm going to click on the blue swatch. That brings up this colour / applique box again. I'm going to click on applique. Now it may show as applique position. I think normally by default it might come up as no applique. Okay, so all you need to do is click on the little downward arrow next to the words no applique and change it to applique position. The inflate size is 1.5mm, which I think is the default in Embrilliance Essentials. That should make the cut file 3 inches bigger in height and width when I save this file, because from memory ScanNCut canvas, anything you add on adds it to both sides. So it's not going to be 1.5mm total difference, the cutting file. It should be 3mm cutting difference. Let's just see how we get on. I'm going to say save as, which is this box here on the left. I'm going to just rename it. I'll call it dog bone cut file. And then before I save it, I'm going to come down to the bottom. This save box should pop up on your computer. And down at the bottom here, it's wanting to save it as an SVG. Now, if you save it as an SVG, in the next box that comes up, if I click on this box opens. And I think by default, it's on 72. Again, from memory, ScanNCut, I think, imports and exports at 96 DPI. So if you saved this as an SVG and you changed this to 96 DPI, the cut file will not be the size you're expecting it to be. But if you use, another cutting machine that uses an SVG, then, that's something to bear in mind. I'm going to cancel that for now. I'm going to come back to save as, just going to have to rename it, sorry. I'm going to change it in this, let me move this up again. Come down to where it says SVG, click on the downward arrow, and I'm going to change this to a ScanNCut file. You should see in here you've got options. You can save as an SVG, an FCM, which is a ScanNCut file. It's giving you options here to save as silhouette files or shortcuts a lot. I'm going to save this as a ScanNCut FCM because I'm going to cut this with my ScanNCut. So it's changed it to FCM. I'm going to put it on my desktop just so I know where it is for now, and I'm going to hit save. Now I can close that. Now I want to save the stitch file. So I'm going to come to the top of the screen and I'm going to go to File, Save As, Stitch and Working, and I'm going to do dog bone applique, and mine is set to PES because that's the format I use for my Brother machine. But again, if you use a different machine, there's all different options down here. So I'm going to save it again on my desktop as a PES, which is a Brother file, and hit save. So just before I go to Canvas Workspace, I'm going to click on the blue swatch. I'm going to select the first step in the stitching order, which is the file I made the cut file from, and down at the bottom of the screen it shows me that outline is 72.8 millimeters by 38.5 millimeters. Now I work in inches, but when I'm making cut files I change my properties up here from inches to millimeters because I find that's more accurate when you're checking the size in Canvas Workspace. The overall design size is 75.7 by 41.4, but it's the first step of the stitch out that I made the cut file from. So that's why I'm just making a note of that. You don't have to do this, but it just does help just to check that you are going to get a cut file to be the size you expect it to be, if that makes sense. So now I'm going to bring in Canvas Workspace. I'm just going to drag that FCM cut file that I've just saved from Embrilliance onto my Canvas Workspace. Again, you don't need to do this. I'm just doing this just to show you. I've not made it bigger, I've just zoomed out to make the design look bigger on screen. So if I click on this cut file that I've just dropped into Canvas Workspace, and I come over to the edit icon, which is the square and the arrow on the right hand side, and again I'm in millimeters just to double check on the size. So the size in Embrilliance of that cut of that placement stitch was 72.8, and I added a 1.5 millimeter inflate, which when you're working with ScanNCut doubles that because it adds 1.5 on either side, as I explained. So that's 3 millimeters it's added to the width and the length of this design. So in Embrilliance, my design was 72.8. If I add 3 onto that, that gives me 75.8. And if I add 3 on to the width, which hopefully you might be able to still see down here, of 38.5, it gives me 41.5, which is what it's showing here. So I know that by creating this cut file in Embrilliance Essentials and saving the cut file as an FCM, it's giving me a cut file of exactly what I expect. If I'd saved that as an SVG, that wouldn't be the case. So if you use Embrilliance Essentials with a ScanNCut and you save, or you create and save a cut file from a placement line, even if you save it as an SVG, even if you change that DPI box to 96, you will not get the exact size that I'm getting by saving this cut file as an FCM. I've tried this out many times because SVG is the default when you're saving a cut file from Embrilliance, and a lot of people just think, well, the ScanNCut can use SVGs, so I'll save it as an SVG. So if you've ever created a cut file in Embrilliance Essentials, added what you think is an inflate onto it, saved it as an SVG, and even if you've saved it at 96 DPI, when you create that cut file, if you've ever discovered that the cut file isn't what you were expecting, this is most likely why. So I've made my cut file, I've saved it as a ScanNCut cutting file, an FCM, and I've saved my embroidery design. So now I'm going to send the cut file over to my ScanNCut machine, and I'm going to cut out this bone shape in heat transfer glitter, and then I'm going to stitch out this design, show you how to use the heat transfer glitter as fabric, so for the background here, and then stitch the rest of it out. So keep watching. Okay, so I've got my ScanNCut cutting mat and I've got my piece of heat transfer vinyl glitter. So I'm going to cut this with the clear plastic transfer sheet still attached. And with all heat transfer vinyl, whether it's just plain coloured heat transfer vinyl or whether it's glitter, you always want to cut it shiny side down, because you're cutting in reverse basically, so that when you peel the waste away and it leaves your design, this clear plastic front that is on all heat transfer vinyl is basically your transfer sheet. You know, you put that down on your garment, you press it, what's left stays behind, and you peel the plastic away. So I'm just going to put this on my mat, and I'm going to put it, as I say, shiny side down, and I'm going to cut this, and then I will be back. Okay, so that's cut. One thing I forgot to say, normally when you're cutting vinyl or heat transfer vinyl, you normally do a half cut. On this one, I've just done a complete cut, because obviously you peel the plastic carrier sheet away, so you don't need the half cut feature of your machine. So I'm just going to get a piercing tool or something and peel this away. Okay, I just put a piercing tool under the top of the film and I'm just going to peel that away now. What's happened there? I must have had a cut in my vinyl. I'm going to see if I can patch this up. It's going to be heat pressed anyway. It's only going on a dog bandana, so hopefully I'll be able to salvage that. But basically, there's the piece that's the transfer that you normally use. And here is the waist. And I don't know how that's happened, but there must have been a cut or something in there. But not to worry, it doesn't matter. We can salvage it, hopefully. So I'm going to hoop up my fabric and then we're going to go to the embroidery machine. So just give me 1 minute. Okay, so when I created the design in Embrilliance Essentials, it was set up in my 4x4 hoop, but I'm going to be using my 5x5 Maggie frame. This design I know should definitely fit in here, but I'm still going to do a trace when I get to the actual embroidery machine. As this is only a dog bandana, I'm going to use tear away, but I have got a scrap, so I've stuck a scrap on the back in about the centre of this design. So I'm just going to place my tear away on top of my hoop. The middle of this design is about the middle of this darkish set of squares here, so I'm going to put it kind of something like this, and then we'll see if this design is actually going to fit. It should do, but I didn't actually measure this before I created the cut file. I'm going to snap that together. I'm going to put this in the machine, bring up the design and load up my thread, and then I'll be back. Okay, I've called up the design, as you can see. I'm going to put the hoop into the machine now, and I am going to do a trace to make sure that this design will actually fit on this bandana. So first of all, I'm going to do a trace just to see where this is sitting, because my machine doesn't know that I'm using an off-brand hoop. So I'm not actually sure where it's going to kind of land on my fabric. So I'm just going to do a trace and see. Okay, so it needs to come lower. So I'm going to lower it and then I'll show you again in a minute. So if I just bring you over to the machine and retrace. The top of the design is just on the stitch line of where the lead, where the collar goes through this bandana. So I'm just going to move it down ever so slightly and hope that it will still fit, because obviously this bandana is shaped to go narrow at the bottom. I'm going to come down a little bit more and just try it one last time. And let's hope this works. I think that's going to have to do. So I've got my thread loaded up. I don't know how well you'll see this, but here are the 3 steps of the applique and then the text at the end. So the first step is going to be that placement stitch, which is what I made the cut file from. So I'm just going to press lock and set this to stitch. And while this is stitching, I'm going to put my little mini press on and see if I can make a repair on this piece of heat transfer vinyl that somehow has got a slit in it. Okay, so there is my placement for my heat transfer vinyl. I'm just going to wait for the little mini heat press to heat up, and then I'm going to put this on here, try and patch this little piece. Okay, so I'm hoping that you're going to be able to see this. I'm just going to have to angle it towards me a little bit. So I'm positioning this little bone shape now with the glitter heat transfer vinyl facing up, and I just want to make sure that it's going to overlap that outline. And if you remember, in Embrilliance I made it 3mm total bigger in the height and the width, which is nothing, to be fair. You know, you don't have a lot of room to play with. So I'm just going to press this down, just give it a few seconds to try and just, you know, heat up that glue that's on the back of the heat transfer vinyl, and just tack it down. Then I'm going to get this piece and line it up and heat that down. It should be okay because obviously, sorry, that's everything falling on the floor. It should be okay because obviously when you use heat transfer vinyl, you don't always stitch it down. You know, you just heat press it down and it should stay in place. I'm not actually worried about there being a, you know, a split in that. It's obviously the edges are going to be held down anyway as an extra precaution with the stitching, but normally you wouldn't have any stitching. You would just heat press this down and heat transfer vinyl stays and you can wash it. I'm using my little loklik mini heat press and I'm just going to go over that little section now, just putting a little pressure on there. And the beauty of this little mini heat press is obviously it fits within your hoop. So I'm just going to hold that on there for a few minutes and put that back in its stand. And that hopefully should be okay. So this is going to go back on the machine now. Okay, I'm going to press the lock on my machine, which activates the green go button. I'm not changing the thread. I'm using the same thread all the way through for the applique. I'm only going to change the thread when I go to stitch the saying on top of the heat transfer vinyl. So let's get that going. So that's the placement stitch done, and on this design it went round twice. So now I'm going to press lock again on the machine and go, and it's now going to do the satin edge border. I may speed up this bit and then I'll come back. Okay, so that's finished now. Now, I think I said when I was showing you the design in Embrilliance, I don't think this bone is symmetrical, and it's certainly not completely like horizontal in alignment. And I think what I've done, I've put the heat transfer vinyl on the wrong end. I think this end should have been here and this end should have been here and the patch should have been on this side. But because I'd heat set it, which I wouldn't normally do until the end, but I was heat setting it to try and hold this little tiny patch down. You know, the satin stitch has not covered it all the way around, but it's a dog bandana. No one's going to look at it that closely. If this had been a design that I was putting onto a garment, I'd come across this bit where the heat transfer vinyl was cut for any reason, I would have redone it. But this is basically just to show you how to create a cut file from an applique file that you can use with your ScanNCut. So I'm not being too precious about it. So now I'm just going to change the thread and I'm going to do the stitching in white. Then I'm going to show it you at the end, give it one last press, and then the project is finished. Okay, that's finished. I forgot to restart the camera, but as you can see, it's all finished. So I'm just going to unhoop it, give it a last quick press, and then we'll have a look at it. I'm just going to tear away the stabiliser. Like I say, I used 2 layers only because I just had a scrap and I just thought I would use it up. Obviously, if this was clothing, as I think I may have already said, I would be using cutaway, but it's a dog bandana and you can see how clean that's come away. There it is. I'm just going to give it another quick press with my little mini heat press. It won't need much because, you know, I did it before. And then I'll just do it from the back. And there it is. So a little dog bandana with some heat transfer vinyl and some machine embroidery stitching. I'll try and get a better photograph of this, maybe try and get Eddie to model it. But that's it. But basically the video was to show you how to make the cut file for anybody that's new to my channel. You can make a cut file from a stitch file directly on your ScanNCut machine, and I have got a video that I did several years ago showing how to do that. If I remember, I'll try and remember to link it at the end. But anyway, that's today's video. I hope you liked it. One last thing just to say, I do have a discount code for all the magnetic hoops. So, you know, whether it's a magnetic hoop that you're going to use on a free arm machine like mine, or whether you want magnetic hoops for your flatbed machine, I do have a discount code with Maggie Frame, and I will try and remember to post it on screen, but it will also be in the description underneath the YouTube video, and it will also be in the accompanying blog post over on my Apple Lover 53 blog. So that's today's video. I hope you liked it. Leave any comments or any questions that you may have underneath the video, and I will try and get back to you as best I can. Bye for now.